What's up, everyone? This week on the pod, I'm stoked to finally have Cris Powerhouse.
Who?
Cris Powerhouse.
Who?
Cris Powerhouse.
Yeah.
He's got your back, and he's coming up in a minute. Please support the podcast by subscribing to it. And it's been a while since I saw a review, so handle business. Review the thing if you got a couple seconds. If you want to go the extra mile, go to patreon.com/185 miles south and become a monthly Patreon. We are trying to do basically bonus podcasts for every interview pod. So if I interview someone, I'm going to have a couple buddies on. We talk about the podcast as well as go through a discography of that person. And I think we've done one for every single interview, going back 15, 20, and we haven't broken our streak yet. So those are some of the best pods. And check it out. And let's get on with the pod.
"185 Miles South", a hardcore punk rock podcast.
What's up, everyone? This week on the pod, I got the mighty Cris Powerhouse. What's going on, Cris?
How you doing, Zach?
Doing great. So glad to have you because, people know how much I talk about Powerhouse on the pod. I'm a Powerhouse punisher, as you could say.
Well, I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, it's so great to have you on. Just to jump right in, where were you born? And to tack onto that, how did you get into hardcore and when?
Okay, so I was born in Montclair, New Jersey, and I lived all around that area. That's Essex County area, New Jersey. I grew up in that area, Verona, Belleville, Caldwell, Montclair, all that area. Through the course of going to school, at that point, I mean, we're talking, 1984, 83, 84, I started meeting some kids that were listening to different stuff. And, prior to that, it was all the usual suspects, AC/DC and, Led Zeppelin and, all that kind of shit. That's the kind of stuff that, you start listening to when you're just kind of discovering, music. Particularly, I was the oldest, so I was the guy that had to kind of figure it all out. I have a younger brother. And so it wasn't like I had an older brother that could kind of turn me on to shit. And my parents had terrible musical taste. It's like the worst ever. Like my mother, like show tunes and like just the worst, most punishing shit you could ever deal with. Like it was bad, bro. Like it was bad. Just being in school, I was a pretty angry kid. Shit wasn't exactly the greatest life. So I kind of sought out, what felt right. And I met some kids that listened to different stuff, and then, from AC/DC and all that, it became, I know Roger would hate this because he thinks that kids that start with metal and stuff like that are a bit more suspect, but that's kind of where I started, like Metallica and Slayer and, that became Corrosion and Conformity and DRI and band Cryptic Slaughter from LA, and they got faster and this and that, and then shortly thereafter the progressions are fast when you're young, and
Sure.
Then I got my hands on the Cro-Mags demo. This kid, I was fucking up a lot in school. My mother had sent me to this all boys private Catholic high school that I managed to get myself kicked out of, but in that time while I was there, it was a lot of kids. There was a lot of inner city kids. You had either like really wealthy, like preppy kids, where you had like a lot of inner city kids, but nonetheless, like it was just this crazy mix of people, and everybody was kind of like on their own thing. And I just happened to run across this one kid. He was like a skater kid, and he asked what I was listening to him. It was a Walkman at that point. I was listening to a Walkman, cassettes and shit, and he's like, "Yo, what are you listening to?" And I think I had like I might have like a Metallica record going or something. He's like, "Oh, boo, that sucks." And I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Well, what are you listening to?" And he said, "I'm going to make you something." And I was like, "Okay, sick." And this was, I guess, probably 1984. And he gave me he gave me this tape, and it had the first Suicidal record, it had the Cro-Mags demo, and it had this band called Lethal Aggression from New Jersey. And it like blew my mind. Like I was like, whoa, I've never heard shit like this. Particularly, obviously the Cro-Mags. I mean, it's just like, holy shit, Suicidal, crazy, and just the best shit. And I fell in love like that. That was it. Like I found me. Like all of a sudden, I'm like,
yeah. Were you able to go to shows like in your teens?
I'm sorry.
Were you able to go to shows in your teens?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, so back then too, there was like a handful of us, like, in my high school at the time, once I got kicked out of, the other school I was able to go back to the high school where my friends were, or at least the people that I had been going to school with. And, there was a very small group of kids that were more into this. And, my friend Gina, if she listens to this, what's up, Gina? She turned me on to like, she was definitely more connected with shows and people and all that. She was a year older than me. And so, we started going to shows. Everything's going on in Newark. Pipeline had shows. We took a few drives down to City Gardens, down to Trenton. But even for us at that point, that was like far. It's like, why are we going to drive all the way down there? We can just go into, Manhattan was 20 minutes. We could be at CB's in 20 minutes from my house. So it's like, why am I going to drive all the way to Trenton? And we did. If it was a good enough show, we would. Where there's a place, Fast Lane in Asbury Park, we could see shows there. Definitely saw a bunch of good stuff at CB's, L'Amour's. L'Amour's was a big deal for me back then. They're putting out a lot of stuff that I wanted to see. I got to see like the Carnivore Retaliation record release party, which was just like insane. And that blew my mind too, because it was on a fluke. I was supposed to be at that show seeing Celtic Frost, and they got whatever the reason that didn't happen. And it became this, if you remember Flotsam and Jetsam, that was a band of like Jason Newsted from Metallica had done before Metallica.
Right.
And his band was playing, but for whatever, he kind of threw this mishmash of bands together, but Carnivore was on that. And they were doing the record release, and that shit, I was like, whoa, like it was some next level shit. Like that blew my mind at that point. That was, I guess, probably 1987 or something like that. But those were the places that we were making the rounds. We saw some stuff. Irving Plaza was still going at that. Was going back then. What's Webster Hall now used to be the Ritz. I saw the Super Bowl of Hardcore there, the first one. I saw the other one when the Ritz moved. Which took over Studio 54 in New York. So, I got around those areas, but I was still pretty young. I left New Jersey when I just turned 21. So, and there was even kind of like a lull when it came to shows, late 89 into 90, I guess maybe 90, things that got pretty violent. And so there was less and less shows happening. So, and that was actually one of the reasons why I kind of felt like it was okay to split the East Coast. I was like, well, there's not even a lot of shows going on. I'm unhappy. This place sucks. I need to get the fuck out of here. And that kind of were some of the things that inspired me to leave. One of them being even that there weren't a lot of shows going on by that point. But a lot of places have come and gone since those times, man. I mean, we're going back a while here.
Yeah. That's a huge move for a young adult. So other than that prompting it, like, why do you choose, you headed to LA, right?
I did. So, so in reflecting back on my life, I've come to understand that a lot of the motivations for me were my mother and me. 3,000 miles was probably about the amount of space that I needed between me and her. And I didn't know it at the time. And it probably took, 25 years to figure some of that stuff out probably. I needed to get away from her. She was a really bad person for me, man. Like she was a pretty terrible human being in a lot of different ways. And at the same time, I had a girlfriend that grew up in New Jersey, and she did special effects makeup for movies. And she had a job opportunity, and she said, she was going to go there. And, we'd been dating for a little while, maybe 7-8 months at that point. And that was just one more reason. I was like, well, fuck, I dig you. And, I need to get the fuck out of here. Like, I'm unhappy. Like, I'm not happy here. I got to do something.
Right.
And, so it was kind of a combination of a lot of different things. But ultimately, in looking back, it was more about just getting away from my mother. Even when I look at lyrics from the band at this point, so much of it is, I realize my mother, like, it's just like, holy shit, man. Like, when I look back, it's like, that was the fuck about her too. And I didn't even know it at the time,
Yeah. It's weird looking back on stuff and realizing it's like therapeutic. Like, what would you have done if you didn't have that outlet?
Yeah, for sure. But yes, so my ex, this girl Erica, it was kind of dope though. I mean, we got to LA, and she got to work on like Army of Darkness. She didn't work on the full movie, but she got to work on the scene where the if you remember when Bruce Campbell falls into the pit and he's got to fight that fucking ghoul or whatever. She got to work on that scene. And she was getting really psyched about the whole thing, and then it all fell apart. Like, this dude that she worked for thought that, like, he was going to get her away from everyone she knew in New Jersey, like her family and her friends and any boys that she might have been, seeing and this and that. And she would move out there with him, and they would fall in love, and, she'd see him for who he is and fall in love with him. And they'd become this, amazing, special effects power couple or whatever. And I showed up and fucked that all up. So, she had been working for him because she went out a few months before me. And then I showed up, and that ended that whole thing. So, and then she got completely depressed, and we needed to bail LA after about a year.
So after that, you moved to you moved to the Bay together?
Yeah, we did. We moved to the Bay. She doesn't live out here anymore, but yeah, we moved to the Bay together, and we were still together for almost 3 more years, like another 2.5, 3 years.
Did you go to any shows when you lived in LA?
Well, yeah, but it wasn't hardcore shows, man. It wasn't, even at that point. So we're talking 91.
Right.
And so I saw, I tell you what, there's a place called the Coconut Teaser that was on Sunset.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Tool play there. I mean, I was kind of sick. There was maybe, I don't know, 40 people, 50 people, like way early on in their careers. They didn't even have a release out yet. They were playing on demo shit and stuff like that. Right. My roommate had played in the band. He'd done, it was like this guy, Lauren, good dude. I liked him a lot. And he was from LA. And so he showed me around, and it was cool. We got to hang out a lot. But he was kind of like in the know, he had a band. They were doing like an industrial band at that point. Everything was really starting to pop with that. Ministry was big, and 9 Inch Nails was just starting to come around and stuff. And they were on that. They were like on that vibe. And he knew a lot of people, because they were kind of like, for the local LA scene, they were kind of happening. And so, they were rubbing elbows. A lot of people came through our house where we lived in Hollywood. He would take me around. So I saw Tool. He brought me to that. I saw, we went to, there used to be a place called Nana that was in Santa Monica. And my ex's friend that we moved in with at the time used to work there. And she worked there with this dude, Rob, that was from Cryptic Slaughter, and Burton, the singer from Fear Factory. They all worked together, and they would come through where I lived, and they would grab each other and they would head out. They would all drive down to Santa Monica together from Hollywood. And so I'd see those kind of guys around and stuff. And that was kind of who was coming through the house and stuff. So I saw Fear Factory's very first show. They played this bar called the Shamrock that was on Sunset. I saw stuff like that. I didn't really see, there wasn't hardcore at that point going on. I was riding the bus to and from work, man. So my day was consumed with going and riding the bus from Hollywood to like Bel Air, right, Westwood, and Santa Monica. My entire life seemed to be on the bus. Like, it was the worst thing ever, man. Like, so I didn't get out. I tell you what, this is a good story. So one day, our roommate Sharon, Burton, and it might have been Rob at the time, all came through, and they looked at me like, hey, you know what? We're playing hooky. We're not going to work today. Do you want to you want to come with us? We're going to go see this. There's a video shoot. And I was like, nah, you know what? I got to go find a job. And they're like, all right, whatever. And I spent my day, I wasted a day looking for jobs. Nothing came of any of it. But later that evening, they come back, and I'm like, yo, how was that? And they said, they're like, yo, it got so crazy. I'm like, well, what do you mean? And they're like, oh, well, they said they kept playing the song over and over, and everybody kept getting more hyped up. And then they started breaking shit, and then they started lighting shit on fire, and it was like crazy. And I was like, yo, what the fuck? Like, this was the video? Like, yo, it was nuts. They said it was getting too crazy. We left. They were like, we wanted to get out of there because it was going to be too much. And I was like, wow, well, what was the band? Like, what was it? Like, I was just some band called Nirvana. Like, the song Smells Like Teen Spirit. And I'm like, who? And like, I never heard, but it's like, fuck, I could have went to that video shoot. That would have been kind of dope just to be like, yo, I was there, you know, say some shit. You know, just for the fuck of it, you know?
Yeah,
but, you know, there was those were the kinds of things that were happening down there, you know? It was like no hardcore, man. There was no I mean, I was there 10 months.
Sure.
Most of it was me trying to get my act together, get some money in my pocket, you know, all of that. So that was pretty much my life at that point.
So you moved to the Bay, and where do you end up?
So I moved into SF, and I've been in SF ever since. I got here in SF in 1992, and I'm kind of pulling a stigma here. I've been living in the apartment I live in now for 27 years.
I see. Oh,
I got rent control, so I'm not going nowhere, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been in this particular spot. I had one other apartment here in the Bay Area in SF. It was in SF too. So, yeah, I came here. I had friends up here. Actually, one guy who was out here, he was actually a guy who knew me from back on the East Coast. We knew 3 people that came from Jersey that were out here. And this one guy, Scott, is somebody that I knew. And he actually knew me from when I used to be like fucked up because we used to do drugs together and stuff. And back east, back in New York, New Jersey. And but he was out here, and I'm already sober at this point. And I just linked up with him, and you know, he actually ended up being the guy that was playing in Powerhouse and said, hey, you know, come try out, you know. So it was funny. We were working on my car, and I'm actually just getting this car back. This was the first car I bought in California. I got a 1974 GTO. It's rare. They made less than 8,000 of these cars when they made them. There's barely any left. I got one of them. It's getting painted right now, but it's just kind of funny to think the day that Ernie brought Scott the demo for Scott to learn these songs, we were working on that GTO. That was back in 1992. So, you know, and here I am, 2020, finally getting this car like on the road. So, you know, yeah, it's been a work of progress. You know, it's just kind of funny how we look. I look at, you know, all the shit that's going on since I've been here, man. But Scott is a guy that, you know, Powerhouse early on changed hands a bunch of times. You know, I wasn't the original singer. Kevin Reed, that played an Attitude Adjustment, was, and he did that for a while. You know, it was, you know, less than a year. We've had a ridiculous amount of drummers go through Powerhouse. I mean, I have to think probably 8 or 9 drummers, you know. So there was a drummer before I even got in the band, this guy, Gene Jones. And then Eric Thomas came in, and old school guy's been around, you know, the Bay Area forever. If you've gone to a hardcore show in the Bay Area, he's probably worked security at it. I mean, he's just been doing the stuff forever. He played in Public Enema, Special Forces, and a whole bunch of other, you know, hardcore and punk bands and stuff like that. That's been his thing. And he was playing when I tried out for the band, and then Eric left, and then we have Big J, and you know, after Big J we had Kid, and after Kid we had Walter, and after Walter we had Ricky, and then now you know, and then Walter was back. You know, it's just like, I mean, it was like this whole thing. I don't even know how many drummers that is, but it's a bunch, man. Like it's changed hands a bunch. Guitar players early on, before we had kind of what became the set lineup, there was, I think, 2 or 3 other guitar players as well that came through. You know,
can you talk about meeting Ernie and Eddie for the first time?
Yeah. So, I mean, the very first time we were working on my car, and Ernie pulled up in some, who knows whose car it was, because Ernie never really owned any of his own cars for the longest time. He always managed to kind of borrow them from somebody and then hang on to them for, like a year, 2 years. Like it just seemed to work that way. But when I formally met him, Scott had said to me, hey, and Scott played in a band called Suburban Chaos back in New Jersey, and they had like some demos and stuff, and they were cool. And he'd actually played in another band called Out of Control, which had a really dope demo. That was like 6 songs of just like, and at the time it was, I still go back and listen to it. Most people probably never be able to find it, but those guys, dope live show, just killed it. So good. And then he moved out here, and that kind of ended all of that. But those were a lot of people that, we'd see like the Social Decay guys, the Lethal Aggression guys. Those were a lot of guys that would kind of like, we'd run across on a regular basis back in New Jersey, seeing the shows and stuff, particularly locally, if we weren't going into New York, that's the kind of stuff we saw. But anyway, so Scott introduces me to Ernie and Eddie. Yeah. He basically just says, hey, you know what, this guy, it didn't work out with Kevin. Do you want to try out? And I was like, yeah, I'll come try out. And so Scott takes me over to Ernie's place, and it's a pretty wild spot, man. I mean, like, it's just like, he lived on East 14th Street, like deep East Side. He's like, I don't know, 40, like East 14th Street and 48th Ave. And it was just like, there's like 1 million people come through his house all day, man. Like there's always something going on. He had like some hustle going on. There's like wild shit. And he gave me the demo, and he said, hey, I don't got the lyrics, figure them out, and, if you can figure out what it is, we'll practice in like a week or two, and we'll see how it goes. And that was literally how it started. I showed up, they liked it, and that was it. Like, and at that point, that's when I met Eddie and the rest of the band. I knew Scott, and at that point I'd hung out with Ernie a little bit, but I mean, Ernie was a dude, like there used to be hookers that would hang out in front of his the place he rented there. And he had like his couch. He set up the couch so it was like just on the inside of the wall along the sidewalk. Like the front door was literally like on the sidewalk. They had like a little, they had like these sliding glass windows, but it had like metal bars on it and shit. But every so often, just for kicks, he'd grab a big fucking handful of fucking fireworks, light them, slide open the window, and just drop them out, because he knew the hookers were standing just on the other side and shit, just to like listen to them scream and go running and shit, and just fucking lose your mind.
You shout out to 14th Street on one of the demos.
Yeah, it's now called International Boulevard. Okay. East 14th Street was the name when I first got here. Yes, East 14th Street, and that's where it runs. It's a long street. It runs, from downtown all the way to deep East Side, down into like the hundreds. So it's a long street, and it goes through the hood. I mean, Ernie and Eddie lived off of that. We spent a lot of time hanging out that area. Like if you got into the 30s and the 40s, that was where like a lot of the Latin stuff was going on. You get further east, like higher up in the numbers, it was more black neighborhoods. You went the other way, it was more Asian neighborhoods. But where they were, that was like the Latin neighborhoods, those 20 streets or so, and that's where they'd run when they were kids and stuff, doing whatever they were doing at that point. Just being wild. I mean, these guys are animals, man. Like in the best way, but animals, like out of their minds.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm asking the question of meeting them, is because for the people that hadn't known them, like they're characters. Like to know them is to love them, even the first time you meet them. And it's hard to describe people like that. So, yeah. So Ernie would drop those firecrackers out. So we're on East 14th Street. It's a big street. It's like, at points, I want to say it might be even 6 lanes wide, like 3 in each direction. In some places it's 5, because you got, 2 lanes and then a turning lane in the middle. And when he was still at that spot, maybe a time or two later, when I went to hang out with him, he's like, oh, hey, check this out. Look at this. I got these golf clubs. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. Like you're a Mexican punk rock, hardcore kind of, I don't know what, but like, okay, golf clubs. And he's like, check this out. And he walks down to the middle of East 14th Street,
and just start smashing golf balls down the middle of the fucking street, like with cars coming, and thinking it's the greatest shit ever, just like laughing, thinking this is like awesome. You see cars swerving and honking their horns and just speeding up, like, flying up toward us and shit. Just, and he's just sitting there laughing, thinking it's the most hilarious thing, waiting for the confrontation. Like, he loved that shit. Like, I never knew someone that just like thrived on drama the way that he did. Like, he loved it. Like, he fed off of it. He relished in it. Like, yo, like, I want to fucking argue with somebody. I want to punch somebody in the face. Like, I want to, just for fun. Like, for him, that was fun. Like, he just, he was out of his mind, dude. He was out of his mind. He never worked. Like, he lived on the barter system. Like, I never knew that dude to have a job ever. Until we had a tattoo shop. He never had a job, man. Like, he'd grind a little bit here and there, but he like traded for everything. Like, I don't know how the fuck he survived, but he did. He always had a roof over his head. He always had a car somehow. Like, he always had a way to barbecue. We'd barbecue till like 4 a.m, like 6 nights a week, just like, he always had money for beer, whatever, but he figured shit out, man. But like, he never worked. That guy didn't have a job. Like, he was crazy. And then Eddie, on his own. I mean, Eddie came from Mexico when he was little, man. Like, his parents stayed behind. He had brothers and sisters up here, and I think he might have been, 8 or 9 years old, and he came up here, and his brothers were pretty wild too. So I mean, he kind of followed suit. No parental vision, supervision at all. So, they kind of just became who they were, and together it was like. It was nuts, man. It was definitely nuts. I mean, and they could drink. We played in Brockton at one point. They put, Warren Lee, if you know him, played for 25 to Life. And then he just became like, guitar tech, superstar working for Slayer and Hatebreed. And, his resume is insane, Clutch. And I can't even remember all the bands that he's worked for, but he was with us at that point. And he figured that Big J and Ernie and Eddie and 2 other guys had drank 180 beers over the course of like 4 hours, man. And they were all still standing, and they were like just being wild. And it was probably like 20 degrees in the venue. Eddie's running around with no shirt on, swinging a beer bottle around, breaking shit. And, just nuts, man. Nuts.
It's literally like Andre the Giant.
Yeah. 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 Very much so. Yes. And the funny thing is that show was the first time that we had met Boston Mike, and Boston Mike came through, and he pulled up in a car, and he says to Ernie and Eddie, he's like, "Yo, I'm gonna go get beer. You want to go me get beer?" Like, "Yeah, fuck you, let's go get beer." And they drove down the street, they parked the car, and they get out, and they go into the liquor store, and they buy a bunch of beer, and they come back out. And Ernie and Eddie are like, they go to get back in the car, and Mike's like, no, we're not taking that. And he torched the car. He just dropped a fucking, dropped a fucking Molotov in the fucking car, just like fucking, torched it because the guy, it's not mine. We're not. and they walked back to the venue.
That's so cool.
Yeah, some fucking, just wild shit, man. Wild shit. It was never dull with those guys. That's for sure. Me being the sober guy, sometimes there's a lot of hand-holding sometimes. But, I must have enjoyed it somehow because I kept doing it,
Yeah. Is there 3 Powerhouse demos?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So there was one that had Kevin Reed on it for sure. That's the one that I learned a bunch of the songs that they had at the time. And then we had we had a few different demos, really. There was the official one where we had, Carl Fisher did the artwork. It has that guy on the cover with his arms crossed and the flip backwards.
Right. I think that's the second one. That's the OBHC demo.
Right. And then we had another one that had just, had less songs on it, but it was some of the stuff that came later on. And that wasn't even really like, it's out there. It's just not like anything super formal, it wasn't like, oh, this is like what we're putting out right now. Just kind of ended up being out there,
Yeah, that one came out in 96 with like it had like Nothing Sacred on it.
Yeah. I want to say we recorded that at Shark Bite Studios. And that's the demo that I was making copies of. Bill Wilson from Blackout Records he was hanging out with Lars. He'd been out here hanging out with Lars Fredrickson, and we were. He came over to watch a movie at my house. I don't even remember what the movie was, but they came over, and there was a guy named John Reed that we knew back then, and he lived in the area, and he had worked for Rancid for a while. So all these guys ended up at my house when we decided to watch this movie. And they brought Bill Wilson with him because John had known Bill Wilson from back east. John was from like Rhode Island or something. He spent time in New York, and he's moved around a lot. But anyway, I was making the recordings of that demo, that particular demo you're talking about, the 96 demo. And he just happened to be there, and he heard it. And that's kind of what, spawned the Powerhouse and Blackout Records working together. And it's just because he was here watching the movie, and he's like, "Oh, that sounds cool. I like that. Like, I want to put that out." And I was like, "Oh shit, okay." It was literally like that. It was super casual.
The rules. Just to circle back a little bit, what were the Powerhouse shows once you joined the band? What's it like in like the pre 7-inch era?
Man,
where are you playing? What's the vibe?
So this is where. And this is probably part of why, there wasn't a huge scene. There wasn't a huge scene going on. There really was not much of a scene at all. Like it was thin, man. It was super thin. We're talking 93, 94. We played with Machine Head a lot. We played a bunch of shows with Machine Head. We played with DRI. At that point we were playing with anybody that would, somehow we could get a show with, we're playing punk shows. We played with that band Face to Face. We played with, and then when a hardcore band would come on, we would jump on that in a second, just to get on something. But, we played like a lot of these, we were playing these punk rock shows. Like, there's a lot of these like squat punk kind of houses that were like all over North Oakland, West Oakland, East, just all over. And we would play some of those too, just to have a show, And I remember we played one, and I don't know, we're on the driveway and we're playing, and there's like, this is this kind of squat punk house, and like crusty, and fucking dogs have been shitting like all over, and these guys start moshing and like whatever, and then they're falling into dog shit, and they're getting like way too close. And next thing you know, we're like all backed up against the garage trying to stay the fuck away from all these guys, because it's like, yo, I don't want to get in touch with that shit, And but it was thin, man. We played in weird spots. Like, we played this place called Brave New World, man. And it's just like, just weird shows, man, like weird, and it really wasn't, in 94, we played the Berkeley Square a lot. That place was great. Everybody loved the Berkeley Square. The shows there were awesome. They brought everybody through there. Korn and Sick of It All came through there at one point, but Madball was coming through there, Earth Christ was coming through there, Crown of Thorns was coming through there, Murphy's Law, and Sheer Terror and Obituary. I mean, they had tons of show. Like, No Doubt had played that spot. Like, it brought a lot of people, and it was only like maybe a 400 cap room, but it was great. Like, the shows went off there, and that it kind of ended up becoming the place for us. And at that point we met like Eric Ozine and Redemption 87. And there was another band, my good friend Joey Vella had a band called Second Coming. And we all kind of met up around the same time. It's just kind of like everybody just kind of manifested in front of each other at the same time. And what didn't seem to exist at all of a sudden was there. And, because we had played Berkeley Square a shit ton of times, and like, it was never our crowd, there were people there, but it wasn't our crowd. And then one day, all of a sudden, there's like all these fucking kids, and we're like, yo, what the fuck? Like, this is cool. And, shortly thereafter, all of a sudden we're meeting, Joey and Second Coming and Eric and Redemption 87. And we all kind of understood, like, it's just us. We got to do this. Like, and we really need each other to do this, because it's just us. And so, we were constantly doing stuff. Eric was well connected. He had done Unit Pride previously and stuff. He'd grown up in the Bay Area. He had good connections. He was a good schmoozer. He definitely, he had good bands. Like, so he had pull, he had sway. And so he helped with a lot of that. Early on, he was putting together a lot of like good, like 10-band shows, 12-band shows, just all day little mini fest kind of things, and it was important. We needed that at the time, and
yeah, we should say that Joey did Breakaway as well.
Joey did do Breakaway. Yep.
Yeah, old school.
Knows how to mosh.
Just like right before that time though, because that's when you're gonna like build the hardcore scene and blow it up. But I just want to hone in on like that little time before, because this could be totally wrong. But I remember like when I started going to the Bay in like the late 90s, there was not like a Nazi problem anymore. In fact, like that's why the shit that happened at that Floor Punch show is kind of like an abnormality, it seemed like. Because people explained to me at the time, they're like, we don't have Nazi problems here anymore because Powerhouse beat them all out of the scene in the mid 90s.
Well, so those guys, yeah. So, I mean, we made it pretty clear like that we just didn't want to partake in what they were partaking in. And so when they did show up, I was like, hey guys, like, no, this isn't going to work here. And, it always became a confrontation, and it ended up being what it was at the time. But there were, there were blips. There were things that would happen, and it was more so, the Bay is definitely a more liberal place. So if you ended up with somebody that showed up at a show, that was kind of a surprise. If you went to Sacramento, like we'd go out to Sac, which isn't far for us. It's less than 100 miles. We met the Hoods out there, and Pressure Point and Mike Erickson, and all of that, and same kind of thing. We all knew we needed to stick together. But the issues there, or you went further east, you got into Stockton and Modesto, places like that. You started running across more of that stuff for sure, and they would show up. They would definitely show up. And we weren't going to turn down a good time. It's like, okay, cool. Here we are. Let's do this. We know what we stand for. Let's walk the walk,
Right. I want to dig a little bit into the sonic quality of Powerhouse, because even going back to like that OBHC demo, the 1994 demo, like listening to a song like Hypocrite, like that is some of the most wild, insane music you could possibly listen to. Right. Like, yeah, I mean, you're just raging. Like it's so fast and gnarly and relentless. And, hardcore, like I think I always say there's like a pre-Hatebreed and a post-Hatebreed world where like the songs kind of got built more around the breakdown. Not that there weren't always breakdowns before, but like it became a focal point. But like, I mean, if you think about a song like Hypocrite, it's like you guys are just raging. Like it's wild. Like, and that's really great. The whole style is like that. Like it's catchy sing-along music and just music you want to get buck to. Like, what did you think when you like heard those songs the first time?
Well, so when I heard all of these songs, because Hypocrite was a song that existed before I was in the band. Something Ain't Right, same kind of vibe. It was a song that existed before I was in the band. Shadow of Lies, same thing. And a lot of those are either Ernie's lyrics or Kevin Reed's lyrics. And but when I heard them, I was psyched. I was like, yo, this band has actually got like a New York sound to them, which to me, I mean, I've related. It's like, this is great. If they had something different, I may not have even been interested in trying out. I mean, maybe I would have, maybe I wouldn't have. I don't know. But, if they had been more like, and Poison Idea is a great band, but if they were more Poison Idea, I don't know if I would have connected so much, or if they were like RKL, and they loved all those bands. They loved RKL. They loved Poison Idea. They had tons of bands, West Coast stuff that I didn't listen to as much. I was one of those jerkwaffs when I was young. It's like, oh, it's not New York hardcore. I don't listen to that. When I had a very small view of music for a long time, and it expanded as I grew up a bit, but even at that age, at 20, 22, 23 years old, I was definitely, not well versed when it came to that stuff, and I may not have even tried. But when I heard it, I was like, wow, this has got like a New York vibe to it. I like it. Like it's a hardcore band. It's not a punk rock thing, because that's what I kind of understood happened out here more. There always seemed to be, East Coast was hardcore, West Coast was punk rock. That's kind of, where the tendencies always kind of went, and so when I heard them, I was like, oh, this is cool. Like I actually want to try out for this band.
Yeah, so cool. Let's talk about doing the 7-inch. because you've come into your own by now. You've done a bunch of songs with them, and like this is so catchy and good. You know, like I mean, you have your anthem song, the Who Powerhouse.
Yeah.
Like, and that's you do that a little bit on the demo, but you milk it more on the 7-inch version, and it's so ill and better, don't you think?
Yeah. Well, you know, so Lars helped us produce a bunch of that stuff. You know, he's been a friend. He's been a great friend for the longest time, and he also was a big fan and still is a big fan of Powerhouse. Believed in what we were doing. You know, liked us as people. Me and him clicked pretty quickly, and so you know, he was more than happy to work with us, and he definitely had, you know, he had production skills that you know, we didn't have at the time. You know, he at that point was already working with you know, Brett Gurewitz and you know, and working on his stuff with Tim and Matt. I mean, you're talking like stellar musicians, like, you know. So he had an experience that we never had at that point, and so he helped us to kind of reshape some of that stuff, and I believe make a bunch of it better.
Right, and just for the listeners that aren't aware of the timeline we're talking about, like this 7-inch is 97, so Rancid has already done with Lars. They've already done Let's Go and Out Come the Wolves.
Out Come the Wolves, yeah, and Time Won't, Life Won't Wait.
Life Won't Wait is going to come out a year later.
Yep, they were already working on it though. Yeah, at that point.
Yeah, so he helped out a lot with like shaping the songs. That makes sense. Sometimes you see that outside.
It was just kind of like, nah, you say that too much, change it, you know. And it's like, oh, well, yeah, I guess you're right, you know.
Right.
You know, and it kind of sucks because you're like, like this is uncomfortable. Like, no, this is what we wrote. This is our song. But then it's like, no, actually, you're probably right. And then you go back and you check it out. And you're like, no, that was a good idea, you know. So you know, a little constructive criticism can go a long way.
Yeah, it's like you name the record Pandemonium, and what a fitting album cover to go with like a battle royal.
Totally. Well, you know, and for whatever, who even fucking knows why, but like at that point, wrestling was like this really like hardcore kids were up on wrestling, and none of us really were, but it was just kind of seemed to fit the times. So like, yeah, let's do it. You know, made sense. You know,
so
looked kind of like a mosh pit, so we're like, all right, do it. You know. Yeah,
the 7-inch and the CD come out the same year, but the 7-inch comes first, right?
Correct.
Okay. Yep. Let's talk about doing No Regrets. Or do you go to the East Coast before you do No Regrets? Do you go off the 7-inch at all?
No, at that point. Wait, so 97. Well, yeah, no, actually we did. So we had the good fortune of playing with Madball the first time they came to California in 1995. I guess Eric Gozien, being who he was, you know, they were offered the shows as Redemption 87 to play with Madball, and for whatever reason they couldn't do it. And hey, cool, like, you know, we lucked out, you know. And he said, hey, do you guys want to play with these guys? I'm like, fuck yeah, we want to play with Madball. Yeah. And we just kind of clicked. We clicked just like you know, just it was like we had known each other all of our lives. And it was cool. You know, we hung out. They were hanging with us. We barbecued at Ernie's house, and, you know, we ran all the, you know, did all the shows together. You know, it was only a 4-show run. We played here in the Bay. We played at the Berkeley Square. We played up in Sacramento at a place that I always say it's the Colonial. People correct me, tell me it's the Colony. I don't even know. It was some spot, you know, some spot in Sacramento. That's where I met Mikey Hood. I met Mike Erickson. Actually, I already knew those guys now I'm thinking about it at that point, but because I knew them in 94. And then we played the Roxy, and we played the Showcase in Corona.
I'm so jealous. I didn't get to see them till 98. But
it was cool, man. It was definitely cool, man. I mean, they were coming out on Set It Off, and man, like, I mean, they fucking blew people away every single night, you know. And the crazy thing is, you know, we're talking 25 years later, and the energy level is the same with that band. It hasn't changed. It's kind of crazy, man. Like, to think that they've maintained that, and Freddie maintains the stage presence that he does still 25 years later.
Yeah. Because you book them now. Like, I think I saw you the last time they played San Diego.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I saw you there. Yep, for sure. So I always do the shows for them in the Bay Area. I've been doing them for, I don't know, 12 years, 13 years, something like that. But Freddie will ask me to come on and tour manage for them when they come to California. And I'm more than happy to do it. I even did like a Midwest run with them on a hate breed. They did like a 20-year anniversary of, what record was that? I'm going to say something stupid. I want to say it was maybe Perseverance or something like that. It might have been 20 years, like a year or so ago. And someone can fact check me on that because I probably don't have that right. But
yeah, whatever. Yeah.
But the point. But anyway, so I run out with them as much as I can. I love those guys. I've known them forever now. But anyway, to answer, man, I take a long time to get to an answer. But
that's good. You make it easier for me, Chris. I appreciate it.
Oh, well, cool. Well, I'm trying, man. So after we played these shows with Madball in California, and we actually had some issues even on those shows. We ended up playing with a band called Power Assault in LA. And as much as they swore that they had nothing to do with white power stuff, their following sure did. They had chartered a bus and rolled like 40 people deep.
Oh, geez.
To this show, and at that point we were doing Ignorant One and a bunch of songs, and we made it pretty clear, like, yo, we don't fuck with that shit. That's not us, and we ain't down with you. If that's your shit, we're not down with you. We're just not. And we can either agree to disagree, or we can really agree to disagree. And that became one of those times, and we were asked politely to, stand down because things were getting kind of rude during our set. There was guys definitely popping some Sig Heils and this and that, and we wrapped it up a little early, and then Madball got on and they played a couple of songs, and some guy jumped up at the edge of the stage and Sig Heiled right in front of Freddie, and that was it. It was on. I'd never seen Big J's drum set get broken down so fucking fast, but everybody had pieces of his kit, man, and it became a thing. A couple of our friends were already getting into it with them in the crowd. Big J jumped off the stage. He still had a cymbal on the end of the fucking the stand, and I just hear king, pang, ding, and he's like going through, and I'm like, a fucking bull in a china shop, man. And I kind of caught him at the corner of my eye, just going off the stage, man. 340 pounds of the guy going fucking flying through the air. It's like, holy shit! And he just kind of plowed through there, and next thing you know, security's breaking the whole thing up and this and that. And that was Ezai, and Ezai was always dope. And he looked at those guys and said to Freddie and those guys, do you guys still want to play and shit? And they're like, yeah, you know what? I mean, this is pretty fucked up. What do you want to do? And those guys were, still being problematic at that point. They were kind of getting pushed out, but they're fighting the security and stuff. And the show just ended up being a wrap, and that's kind of how the tour ended. It was kind of a short one that night, but good memories. That's the kind of shit you bond over sometimes.
Yeah, and just to describe Jay, your drummer, for the people that don't know, he's probably like what, 6'4"?
Yeah, 6'3", 340 when he was playing drums in Powerhouse.
That's wild.
Big guy. Yeah, he was actually, he was down at Jack London Square in Oakland at one point, and the Raiders were back here, and they were having some Raider thing, and Jay was a cranky dude, man. Like he was always just kind of just like ornery and shit, and these guys come up to him like, hey, you should be fucking playing football for us, and he's just like, fuck you, I'm a Cowboys fan, and they were just kind of like, huh. Okay, and fucking laughed him off or whatever, but he was just like just like that, it was just fucking.
Yeah, didn't he used to use a bucket as a drum stool?
Well, yeah, because he broke the drums. He would break any kind of drum seat. Like if he had a drum thrown, he would break it. So he used a 5-gallon like paint bucket, because it for whatever reason
so rad.
Held up. Yeah, so that's what he used. He definitely did.
That's so rad. All right, so let's talk about you going out to the East Coast, because you make the connection with Madball, and then you go out on the 7-inch.
Yes, correct. So and this was actually pre 7-inch, because we went out there. We played with Madball in '95 and early '96. We went out and we played a bunch of shows. Freddie got us out there. We got on a show with them at the Wetlands. That was actually the first time that Roger and Kabula and Stigma were all back on the same stage. And I don't even remember how many years it had been, but that was the first time they got back together. And that was what, that was the beginning of them doing Something Gotta Give. But we played with Indecision, and Indecision killed it that night. And we played with Madball, who obviously killed it that night. And 25 to Life at that point had played, and 25 to Life was making a lot of moves at that point as well. I mean, it was a sick show. It was a sick show. And, we did a bunch of other shows with 25 to Life on that run. We played in Newark. We played at the Pipeline, and we played somewhere in Connecticut. It wasn't even a skate park. We played somewhere else. Some of it becomes a blur. But I want to say that was the time we were there, and I don't know, Ernie and Eddie and Jamie from Hatebreed ended up in a diner, and some drunk guy sat down thinking he was being cute and ended up with like a bunch of broken plates of, breakfast for dinner over his fucking head because he's a big retard, and, we did a bunch of those shows. And I mean, that was the first time that we got out there. That was the first time, and we played with, like Maximum Penalty, and we played with, Murphy's Law, and we played upstate New York too. We played in Albany. And we played with Killing Time. Like it was a good run. It was, it was only 4 or 5 shows, but they were dope. All the shows were dope with bands that I loved, and it felt good to be on the East Coast. How did
that feel for you personally to like get to return and do it like in a proper style?
Oh yeah. Oh shit, man. I mean, it was just great because I mean, it's like, okay, we're a hardcore band, and now we get to play, at the epicenter of at least in my mind, of hardcore, New York City. Like, we're playing, we're playing at the Wetlands, we're playing upstate, we're playing, actually I think we played Pennsylvania, we played like out in East Stroudsburg, there was it was good shows, man. Like it was just, it was dope. And I'm playing with people like bands that I'd seen forever, Murphy's Law that I loved. Like we were playing with Murphy's Law. I love Jimmy to death. Still one of my favorite bands live ever. Just like, he still kills it, man. Like that band is just so dope. I mean, Jimmy's probably still one of my favorite guys to watch. When he gets up there, I know I'm going to laugh, and he's going to play a bunch of shit that I just love to hear. And it's going to be awesome. But yeah, it was like a coming home for me, to come back and just be like, wow, here we are. This is where I grew up watching shows. And now I get to not only play these shows, but I get to play these shows, with people that I grew up listening to and admire so much, and
real validation.
Sorry, what's that?
Some real validation.
Yeah, for sure, man. For sure. And then, just, I mean, there was just all these like little special things about it, the fact that, we were there for that reunion of, Stigma and Kabula and Roger. I mean, like, that's a once in a lifetime thing. And we just happened to be there. I was sick. That was so dope. And they played 2 songs, but it was like a fucking tsunami wave of people coming toward the stage as they started. It was fucking nuts. Like it's the kind of shit that you just, if you happen to catch something like that, it's the most like amazing thing you're going to ever see. It's you're just watching this. It looks like literally like a wave coming at you, but it's human beings, and it's just fucking the craziest shit to see, man. And I got to be a part of that stuff. To know, this is my community. These are my people. And to just know that I've been able to be a part of it and be included in it means a lot to me, man.
Yeah, I mean that's legit hardcore history because that record and that tour they did on that was huge. The AF on Something Gotta Give.
Yeah, we got to go to Europe with them on that record. It was fucking amazing.
Oh, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it was fuck. I mean, that was a big deal, I mean, Kabula was back. I mean, how many people were just excited that, it's Stigma, Roger, and Kabula. And it was supposed to be Jimmy Coletti, and some things had happened, and he wasn't able to make it on the tour. He ended up getting sick. I don't remember exactly what the details were, but he couldn't make it. And so Willie Shepler was there, and we'd already chilled with Willie a bunch because of, Mayaball and shit. So it was sick, man. It was, and Ernie and Eddie drank with Stigma every single night. They wrecked the bus. Like we got yelled at for it. Big J had to knock some, or actually no, Ernie knocked some dude up in front of the SO36 in Berlin. Big J had come out and he was like, he'd just taken a shower and he's sitting there in his flip flops and he's trying to walk to the bus and this guy's getting in his way and he's all drunk and stupid. And Big J just kind of like politely put his arm on his shoulder to move him out of the way, really, because he's not trying to have this dude step on his feet and whatever. He literally was being very like nice. I was kind of surprised to see him be nice like that. But he went to push him. The guy started going to try to swing at Jay, and Ernie just came from the side, boom, just knocked the dude out. And then Mosh sat there. That was the tour manager, and he scurried us up onto the bus, and we had to leave because this guy's laying there fucking sitting in blood and fucking.
Was that your first time ever to Europe? And any other things you remember?
Yeah, it was. And I mean, the thing about going, I mean, we were so fortunate to go with Agnostic Front because, like, the way they're regarded out there is just, it's nuts, man. Like, it's nuts. Like, every place, and you get to Europe, particularly Germany, everybody's so proud of their beer from their region. And so every single venue is like literally like trying to push like hand trucks full of beer onto the bus every single night. And Roger and the tour manager are like, no. And Stigma's like, yes. And, and somehow it all manages to be on there. And then Stigma and Big J and Ernie and Eddie will just rage, dude, like all night. I mean, we wake up, there'd be broken glass everywhere and food smashed into everything. And fucking, the curtains are torn off. And, it's just like, it was a bit much, bro. It's just like, yeah, man. And Stigma loved that shit. And he'd always be like, you know what? Yeah, the big one, he's all right. Meaning Big J. Big J liked to drink, but he'd go to bed at some point. He'd just get bored with shit and be like, I'm going to bed, And then Ernie, Ernie could drink a lot too, but he's like, the Mexican, and Eddie, he's like, he's my drinking partner. He's the guy. And they would go, that was a competition between Stigma and Eddie about who was going to drink who under the table that night. And neither one would ever, it was like a legit Mexican standoff. Nobody was doing, no one was getting the better of anybody,
So, yeah.
But it was epic, man. I mean, we got to play great went to Prague and we were in Budapest and, a lot of places in Germany, and those guys have been going forever. So like the treatment that we got was just, so good that you can never go back after something like that. And we did, but you think you can't go back because, you're just going to be like on like the worst fucking van tour, sleeping in hostels, funky communal showers that who knows where you're going to catch on the bottom of your feet. Like just like the worst shit that you'd ever really want to have to do as a band touring and shit. You just figure that's the option. That's your other alternative. And it's like, doesn't sound so hot. You do it, but yeah, that's kind of like, that was a big deal, man. That was a big deal to go out with those guys.
How many times did you go after the AF tour?
So so that was 97, right? So we went back again with Ignite, and that's another great band to go out with. At that point, Ignite had a pretty good working arrangement with Vans, and they, Vans have been doing the Warped Tour a lot of years at this point, and they were trying to brand the Vans club tour, and they were calling it the Off the Wall Club Tour, and Ignite was kind of the guinea pig. I mean, you can't really call them a guinea pig. I mean, those guys were killing it out there, but they were willing to be like the first try. And so it was Ignite, and it was SNFU, and it was us, and it was a band from Sweden called Venerea, which I guess is like, like a venereal disease or something they called. That's what they chose to call themselves. And another band that ended up being on the band's record label at the time called Deviants. And they were all great kids. And, it was kind of cool for us. We stuck out. We were like the hard band. So we were completely different from everybody else. And so it kind of worked in our favor in a lot of ways because we stood out every night. But to tour with Ignite, I mean, those guys, like, we were on a place called Home. They put that record out, and that record just to me is amazing. I love those guys. I love those. I mean, Zoli sang at my wedding. Zoli and Brett came and played at my wedding. That's how much I love those guys. And Zoli also did Ave Maria at Ernie's funeral as well. But we had a great relationship with those guys. We had a great relationship, and they were more than happy to bring us. We played lots of shows with them here in California. We play with them in LA. They play with us up here. We play in between with each other. We had good times with those guys. And that tour was exceptional as well. I mean, they were like road warriors. That was 40 shows in 42 days. Like, those guys did not play around. Like, there was no breaks. And yeah, man. I mean, those guys just same thing. We got really fortunate on that tour, but those are the only 2 European tours that we did. After that, we did our state stuff and all of that, and it wasn't much later. That was in 2000, and come 2000, end of 2003, beginning of 2004 is when things started turning bad for Ernie.
Yeah, let's dive into doing the No Regret CD though. How is it different approaching like doing a full length from doing demo stuff and then doing a 7-inch and a CD EP? But here you're doing a full length, and like the thing about the CD too is like it's sequenced so good, right? Like from beginning to end. Like it's not a lot of records like they're fronted on the front end. Like you start with bangers, it kind of fades a bit, but this one is just like all the way through it. It seems very planned out.
Yeah, well, there was a lot that went into that. So again, Lars worked with us on that record. So, so that was all done around the same time. And what we did is, we did the Pandemonium 7-inch, and Lars' suggestion was, hey, we go with Andy Ernst. He gets really good sound for vinyl. We know this is going to be a 7-inch. And he's the guy. Let's do that. Because at that point, Blackout didn't have any intention of putting the No Regrets out as vinyl. It was only going to be a CD. So we knew the 7-inch was vinyl. So we went to Andy Ernst, Art of Ears, and we did that record there. But this was all kind of going on at the same time. They happened not far apart, and so it was strategic. I mean, I got to tour manage for Lars for 6+ years. With All From Casuals. And I watched him develop that band, and the man's got a really good business mind, and he understands music, and he's very good at what he does. And he was willing to lend that to us, when it came to us, putting out what we put out. And so again, to him, we talked about song placement a lot at that point. It was definitely like, okay, what makes sense? How's the flow, this and that? And, it got rearranged a few times, and the 7-inch was the same, like we thought about it. It's like, yeah, we want the 7-inch to kind of fade out to what the CD is going to begin with, because we kind of close out. It was almost like a Bad Brains kind of move, where we would have that old school intro that would fade out on the 7-inch, and then it would go into Hypocrite, which is what we used to always do. We would have our old intro from like the demo going into Hypocrite. That's what we would do live. And so it all kind of connected. And anyway, same thing with the record. It was all about, the flow. And even those songs, Power Trip was redone. I Should Have Known was too, all these songs were tweaked. They were definitely tweaked. No Regrets, little changes, nothing dramatic to any of the songs. We had the bones were there, but those little tweaks, man, they made all the difference. But
yeah, and just the sequencing, like when Nothing Sacred ends, like you're ready for Ignorant One. It's almost like I can't take the two apart.
Yeah, no, and I had some people that, they weren't hardcore people at all, but people that I'd known that had listened to the record because they knew me. They're like, is that one song? Is that 2 songs? I was like, well, it's 2 songs. It's 2 songs, well, why are they so close together? We can't, it's just, that's just what we chose to do. And, that was recorded. I mean, we did that whole recording in like a week, like recorded and mixed and everything. And I know that seems like a long time in some cases, but for what we were doing, we wanted to put out something really good. And so that was us taking our time. I mean, we did a lot of those demos in a day or two, but we really wanted this thing to be good. But even at that, there was still a sense of urgency that Lars likes to work with when he did that. He captured something with us by kind of demanding things out of us, not verbally, not sitting there saying, hey, you got to do this, but like, he brought something in. I mean, he's maybe I'm biased because he's my friend, but he's a great guitar player. He's a great music writer. I mean, the amount of records that he's worked on and the success of those records, I mean, you can't deny what he does. He's
a musical genius. I think just because people write punk music doesn't mean they're like lesser than a Bob Dylan, right? Like this is our favorite kind of music,
Well,
So it's like, yeah, he's a great American songwriter.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, yes. And to that point, it's one of those things that kind of, behooves me. I don't quite get it sometimes when, you'll have like punk rock kids that'll sit there and be mad about Rancid. It's like, yo, that should be your superheroes. Like, not only do they represent punk rock, but like they embrace punk rock, they live punk rock, and they play punk rock. They're playing what you want to say. These guys, and they do it. They do it great. They're good at it. Like, why would you be mad at that? Like, why wouldn't you embrace the fact that like these should be the guys that's like, yo, these are our guys. Like, this is what they do, and they're really good. Like, how could you be mad at that?
I don't know, because they can just they put out a new record, and it's like you listen to it, it's like, how the fuck are you still coming up with songs,
dude,
that are good?
Yes, 100%. I mean, I was fortunate enough to work for them. I got to do some tours with Rancid as well, and I mean, I could just sit there and watch them every night. I mean, the live show is still just so insanely good, man. Like, I literally watched it every night for like, I don't know, 5 months, and I never got tired of it. Never got. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So
let's talk about the skit before Power Trip. Whose idea was it, and how do you guys do it?
Well, yeah. I mean, we were just fucking around looking for things to do. Cris Powerhouse was there from, he played with Machine Head, played with Attitude Adjustment back in the day. He definitely a rock god, has been around forever. One of the sick ones. I mean, he's definitely, he knows what the fuck he's doing when it comes to, you put him behind the drums. And he was hanging out too, he was there with us. Yeah, it was just kind of goofing around. Like, yeah, let's do a little skit or whatever. And, we were on, this was like one of those taco missions where I think we were eating tacos pretty much every single day. We'd go into the taco truck. That was our thing. We hung out at there was this, Tio Tonio was a taco truck in East Oakland that we always ended up at. It was there all the time. It was pretty good. It, be open late night. So we could roll in there at like 3 a.m. And, so that was just kind of like the what was in the air all the time. And so it was just like, and it was a party vibe and whatever. And the song particularly, it's like, let's just, put this thing together. There wasn't much, there wasn't a lot of thought that went into it other than let's just do this thing. We'll make it sound like a party and this and that and whatever. There wasn't anything super calculated about it, but that's Cris Powerhouse as the police officer.
Okay. That's sick. I mean, it came out great. Like, you don't got to overthink it, right? That's why it's so good.
Yeah, I mean, it literally was just like, hey, let's try this thing. It was literally just like that. It was so kind of on a whim, and it worked out.
Yeah.
That's actually.
I got to ask this for the local people. You guys came down at some point and played JP's Barn. I don't know.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. What do you remember about that show?
That was epic. I remember eating tri-tip sandwiches that his parents made. That was dope, man. I mean, they came with like a stupid stack of tri-tip sandwiches they cooked up and fed us. It was awesome. I mean, just the vibe to be like, yo, okay, A, where the fuck are we?
Yeah.
Like, we're out in the middle of nowhere, it felt like to us, B, like, all these kids are dope. Like, everybody's just like, the vibe was awesome, man. Like, just the vibe was awesome. The show went fucking crazy. It's like, yo, we're playing this barn in Ojai, and like, there's a big crowd here, and everybody's going nuts, and stage dives and singing along, and just the love that was shown to us, man. Like, it was dope. It was definitely dope.
That was a great show, because that's like, it's past Ojai too. For like the people that don't know, like, Ojai is kind of already in the middle of nowhere. You go like 30 minutes like inland from Ventura, but then JP's house was like 30 minutes past that, like up in the hills.
Yeah, dude.
It was wild.
Yeah, I remember, and our boy Damon was there, and JP had asked him to do a bunch of like cholo graffiti on the inside of the barn and shit. He did some shit like that, and I remember a bunch of that, but I also remember having to drive the fuck out of there, like pitch dark, and we took the twisty way. We had to drive all the way to Phoenix.
Oh shit!
That was where our next show was, and so we had played that show with you guys, and then I drove through the night because those guys ended up drinking, and I found that we were much more efficient if I drove through the night, because these guys were drinking pass out rather than drinking have to stop and use the bathroom like 50 times.
Yeah.
So as the goal was, okay, we're gonna leave at like 10, and I'd start driving at 10 wherever we were going, if that happened to be 10, 11, 12, whatever. And these guys would keep drinking, and they'd pass out in like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And then I could drive and make time, because they weren't going to tell me I need to stop. Because then it's like, not only is it about pissing, then, Ernie was the guy, he'd walk into a store and he was the point of sale guy. So what was everybody to register, he needed to look at it and fuck with it and buy something. And so we never made time if it was in the daytime. So we always drove through the night, and we had to drive to Phoenix. And we drove all the way to Phoenix. This is the other part that I remember about that particular show. We get to Phoenix and we finally get a hotel room, because we're pulling in there at like, I don't know, we probably pulled in there at like 10 in the morning, 11 in the morning. And we finally get a room. And I had to take care of a few things. And I'm finally getting ready to go to sleep. And I go to lay down. And next thing I hear is slam, 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 slam. And the hotel doors to the room I'm trying to sleep in, and the next one over, that 25 to life, and they're all slamming and slamming, I'm like, and now these guys, they're like little kids. They jump behind the bed and they're like giggling and this and that. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm just, what the fuck are you guys doing? Next thing you know, doors getting pounded on. And now the cops are outside. I'm like, oh, what the fuck? So I've been up all night. I haven't slept yet. I drove all through the night. Well, turns out that these guys decided they wanted to rage down at the pool. And they took all the fucking pool furniture and they threw it in the fucking pool, and something got lit on fire. And I don't know, the hotel security showed up, and, he goes to say some shit, and, and Rick picked something up in front of him, was like, ah, and like just threw it in the pool right in front of him. I think it was like the big concrete weight for one of the, the umbrellas or some shit. Like, so now there's just tons of shit. There's no water in the pool, all the furniture, all the there's concrete. The place is, something's burning, the whole shit. The cops decide that they need to ask us to leave. So now I'm still no sleep. These guys are cracking up. They think it's the greatest thing ever. I'm just like, you motherfuckers, man. I'm so goddamn tired. I just want to sleep right now. So we get in the van. And so not only the cops just making sure we leave the property, now they're giving us an escort out of the city. Like, they're following us. They get on the highway with us. And they're waiting, and we literally get to the sign that said the Phoenix city limits, and they got on their loudspeakers and they said, "Don't come back, you assholes!" And they stopped on the side of the highway, and then we just had to keep moving. And we drove all the way down to Tucson, where our next show was. Didn't sleep that day, and we played that show in Tucson. And for whatever reason, we decided that we didn't want to stay in Tucson, and I drove all the fucking way to San Diego before I got some sleep the next day. So that's part of what I remember about that Ojai show.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, man.
You guys have a kind of a big break between doing No Regrets and What Lies Ahead. What do you guys do in these 4 years?
Well, at that point, we had a couple of little change, not little changes, but we had some changes, around that time. So, we did No Regrets, and 98 comes, and Big J. So we had a good friend. His name was Circle B, and he and Ernie and Big J all lived in East Side Oakland, and it was like these row houses. There was like 3 rows of like apartments. It was like three rows of 3 little apartments each, and they were all connected. So it was just rows of them. And we used to rage there, like, on 4th of July, a bunch of friends would come. They would shoot, like, whatever, the Tech 9s and whatever else they had, shotguns, and, they'd blow shit up all night. And, it was just like one of those places. You could be wild, and no one really tripped. And, Ernie lived at the back one. Our boy Circle B lived in the middle one, and Big J lived at the front one of this one particular row. And then across, there was these girls that we knew that lived at the top one, closest to the driveway. And then there was this dude named KJ Dave, because he smoked a lot of dust, that he lived in the middle one. And then his brother, Jamie, lived at the end one. And anyway, Dave used to do dumb shit. He did really dumb shit. He'd get dusted and he'd do dumb shit. And so Ernie and Bob would have to slap him up every once in a while, just because he was a jerk. Like, the guy just did dumb shit because he was too fucked up for his own good. And anyway, one day, Dave calls Bob. He's like, "Hey, Bob," Circle B, his real name is Bob. He's like, "Hey, Bob, come over here." And Bob went over, and he went to open the screen door. And as he opened the screen door, Dave lunged out and stabbed him and he stabbed him in the heart, and he bled out like in a couple of minutes, and he died in Jay's arms. And at that point, Jay was just kind of like, "Yo, I'm done. I'm out." Like, and he, you know, I mean, his best friend. I mean, they were in jail together. They, you know, all this shit. Like, you know, they partners in crime. Like, these dudes rode for years together, Jay and Circle B. And when that happened, it devastated Jay. I mean, Bob was a dope dude, man. Like, he was just like, he was a hard motherfucker, but he laughed about everything. He was just not. He wasn't an angry dude. He was always just, you know, like good spirit, this and that. I mean, even when you know, even when people would get like heated, like him and Ernie almost fought one time, and Bob was like laughing the whole time, even though, like, I mean, he would have did what he ever needed to do, you know, but he just laughed. He was just like a good hearted dude, you know? And anyway, you know, that fucked Jay up, man. You know, I mean, you have your friend literally die in your arms, just bleed out, man. You know, like he watched him turn gray, man, in his arms, you know, as the blood left his body, you know, and that was it for him. And so he left, and you know, we were bummed, you know, it was a sad time, you know, but we understood it. And we ended up getting this guy named Kid. His name is Aaron. He's played for Naked Aggression for years now. But he had played with a band called I Madman that we knew from Fresno. And Damon, the guy that did the graffiti at JP Spot, was the singer from that band. And anyway, we got Kid, and he started playing for us. And we did like a Japan tour. We went out there and we played with this band called Numb, who's really good. Eternal Brotherhood. All these Japan was dope. Like, what an amazing culture. Like the amount of respect that like guests are given, the amount of respect that older people are given. It's pretty cool to see, man. I mean, the culture and the tradition. It's just like, wow, like pretty dope. And then the shows were amazing, man. Like just packed. Like it was like the subways, like, you know, where they got those guys with the sticks. I mean, they literally crammed them in like that. And the shows were sick, and we had Kid for a while, you know, and we did that, and, you know, we did the Japan tour, and we were slowly working on music, you know. I mean, it seemed more like the barbecue and the hangout was almost more important at the time, you know. You know, we were truly friends. We weren't just playing in a band together. Like we hung out collectively, like almost every single day. If I didn't see Ernie 5 times in a week, something was off. Like there was something. You know, I must have been sick as fuck, or, you know, whatever. I don't know. But we literally saw each other every single day, you know? So, you know, the band was a priority, but at that point, it just, you know, some, you know, roster changes and stuff kind of slowed things down. And, you know, we did the Japan stuff, you know, and we did like some small release stuff at that point. You know, there was like the 7-inch that came out with Numb.
Yeah, split 7-inch with Numb.
Yep. So there was that, you know, and then, you know, we were like just working on demos and things like that, and you know, and then we finally started, you know, trying to put together. That was in '99. So, you know, What Lies Ahead. You know, we were working on a bunch of those songs, you know, but we were also trying to shop around. You know, we did have an option for a second record with Blackout. But at the time, we just, you know, it just kind of seemed like, yeah, you know what, maybe we're going to try to do something else. And we ended up talking, you know, AJ from Resurrection AD Records was pretty aggressive coming after us and stuff. Like he wanted to sign us. And he offered us some more money, you know, to do a record. And we thought, hey, well, that's a good thing. We didn't pocket any of it, you know, but it gave us the ability to you know, record at a pace that was kind of nice. We had a little bit more time to do it and stuff. So,
yeah, because this is like a super well thought out record, you know, like that makes sense that you were demoing stuff, because you guys take some big risks on this record too. Like Bulletproof is a wild song, you know, with like the singing in it, and then What Lies Ahead going kind of melodic, and then I had totally forgot about the song Lose My Faith until I was doing my homework for this, and like that's a fucking deep ass song too.
Yeah, it's trippy, right?
Yeah, like the journey this album takes you on too is like something else.
You know, that's the funny thing. Those three songs I actually wrote the music for.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, it's just, we all brought different things to the table, you know, but Ernie was a juggernaut, like in the studio. That guy fucking killed it when he wrote music, man. Like he could just do it with such ease. I'd have to come back to riffs for days and weeks and months and years. And this motherfucker could literally walk in a room, And I'd be like, yo, I got this. And he'd be like, okay, we're doing this. Boom, 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 boom. And we'd be done. Like 5 minutes. I mean, he could do that on the regular. When we came up with that first intro, I was like, yo, we should have an intro. He's like, okay, I got it. And he literally played that just like that. He had shit in his head like that. It's Tim from Rants is like that. He's just got like shit rolling around in his head all the time. He's just like, yo, how do you have that much music going on in your head like that? Like I admire it. I'm kind of envious of it at the same time. You know, it's like, fuck, I wish I could be like that, you know?
Whose idea was it for the singing part in Bulletproof, and how do you guys pull that off?
Well, yeah, I don't know why we decided. I guess we just kind of felt like, yo, let's try this. It seems like maybe there should be a chick singing there. And Ernie just happened to know this dude that was from like around the way. Like he lived in the same, you know, in like the same apartment complex that, you know, Ernie lived in at some point. His name was Pierre. And he just kind of had a roster of chicks that like sang for stuff. And, you know, he was kind of in music and shit. And Ernie just called him up, said, hey, yo, you got a girl that could come in here and flow. And he showed up in like an hour and he brought this girl and she fucking killed it, man. We're like, holy shit, that was dope.
Yeah, I know. It sounds so amazing. Like I thought, you know, it might've been like sampled out of something. That's wild.
She just showed up and busted. Came in and did that. She did that in 2 takes.
Holy shit.
2 takes she did that. And she just came out and just like, she did it once to say, nah, I want to do it one more time. And then she did it. And that was it.
How do you feel about the albums against one another? Like if you were going to describe No Regrets versus describing What Lies Ahead.
Well, so, you know, No Regrets. I mean, that record, I look at it now, I'm like, wow, that's a pretty fucking, like, I'll listen to that record like, holy shit, like that thing's pretty fucking, it's pretty slick, man, in a lot of ways. Like it's raw, it has that urgency, like that stuff that Lars likes to capture, but at the same time, like it's really well put together, man. Like, you know, when people hit me up, they hit me up and say, yo, I'm checking out No Regrets. And I get it. Like, I understand why. There was definitely like a vibe that was caught with that whole record. I actually kind of felt like, you know, What Lies Ahead definitely took more of a like a New York hardcore, you know, No Regrets definitely has a much more punk edge to it for sure. You know, a lot faster. There's more melody to it. But as I go back, I like that shit a lot. Like, you know, some of the songs, the way they were written, they almost feel like a chase. You can almost like, as you're listening to it, you can feel the mosh in your head. Like just the way the riffs kind of circle around and circle around and circle around, you know? And then we kind of, you know, we played a lot of hardcore shows with a lot of East Coast bands and this and that. And it's just kind of like, you know, things definitely got heavier too. And I think we were just kind of, you know, when it came to What Lies Ahead is just kind of where our heads were at the time. You know, there's definitely songs on there. That record wasn't as successful. And I think, you know, I talked to Joe Hardcore about it at one point. He's just like, yeah, you know, when that record came out, there was a kind of a weird lull in hardcore. And that kind of makes sense. But, you know, it's a different record for sure, you know. But I also felt like there were songs on there that in some ways were better, you know. Like you know, Ernie wrote When They Come For You, like the music for that. That song still to this day is just, for me, it's a fun song to perform. Like,
yeah, and Color versus Pride, standout song.
Color versus, yeah. That's another one. Yeah, I mean, there was great sort of It's My Life and, you know, Bulletproof. Like back then we did play Bulletproof live, and it, you know, kind of came off not really. Like listening to on our record, I think is actually a lot better. You know, not necessarily a live song so much. But when we did play it in Europe, it was kind of cool because Rob, that played bass for SNFU, would come out and we kind of extend in the middle there, like where the girl would normally flow and stuff, and he would come out and flow and do all this shit. And it was fun. It almost became, you know, a little bit of a party. Like we had people jumping on stage for this and that and whatever. And it was a good time. But yeah, the songs definitely got different. You know, I also, you know, No Regrets. I was 25 years old, you know, 26 years old, 24 years old, 23 years. So, you know, as we wrote a bunch of that music, you know, and my headspace was different, you know, I was pretty, you know, clueless to myself at that point, you know, and I definitely became more aware of some of my inner struggles and things that I have as What Lies Ahead kind of developed, you know, and at that point, you know, we'd experienced a bunch of loss. You know, we'd had a lot of friends that had died, Bob being one of them. You know, we had a week at one point where 3 friends died in 2 weeks, you know. And that's kind of what inspired What Lies Ahead. Just kind of like holy shit, like, life's fucking crazy. What's happening next, But yeah, I love both of those records for different reasons. I like what we did. I don't know. I do feel like, for me personally, I felt like I got better lyrically on the second record,
They're both awesome. They're very different, but
Yeah.
like it's still you singing, right? So it's going to have the same flavor. Like it's two different approaches. They're both great though.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that, man. I do.
Let's talk about Powerhouse wrapping up. Actually, before we do that, let's talk about the bomb shelter a little bit.
Yeah.
So you guys do a club. Can you describe the place and talk about that experience?
Yeah. So, Ernie being the hustler that he was, he always just liked to have shit going on, and he always had a great idea for the next thing that he wanted to do. And, he was the idea guy, and then he would let everyone else kind of do all the footwork. And he calls me up one day and he's like, I opened a club. And I'm like, what the fuck you mean you opened a club? And he's like, I got this spot, because we had been, let me back up a minute. So there was a spot in Alameda. Alameda is an island right next to Oakland. It sits in the bay. And it's a town, like, it's not a small island. It actually is, it's miles and miles long. It has tons of homes, tens of thousands of people live on it, but there was a bar, and we had been doing shows at that bar. There's a place called the Alameda Saloon. And for whatever reason, maybe, this guy Jack that owned it, he was a lawyer of all things, but he owned this bar, and he was willing to let Ernie do whatever the fuck he wants in there. Like, he gave Ernie the keys. He fucking let Ernie book whatever shows he wants. Let Ernie put one of the big bouncy castles in the middle of the fucking bar for like a Halloween and shit. And like, the place would get wrecked on a regular with whatever was going on. And, that bar ultimately closed, and that's where we had done a bunch of shows. And so Ernie needed a new spot, and he just found this warehouse, like deep East Oakland, man, like in the hood, man, like deep, deep, deep East Oakland. And it had been like an auto body spot. And who knows, might have been a chop shop. There's a bunch of them out that way, but it had been an auto body spot, and we got it. It still had like the spray booth sitting in the back, and he had pulled the stage out of the Alameda Saloon, and he started throwing together some like little funky shows and this and that. And the room was cool, man. You could put a lot of people in that room. Like we probably could have put 600 or 700 people in that room. And just realized that, like, hey man, like, if we're going to do this shit, and we're going to ask some of our friends that are touring bands that are coming through from like all around the country and shit, like, this fucked up little stage ain't going to cut it, man. Because it was a fucked up little stage. And so me and my roommate at the time, this guy Dayton, who you could see, he posts a lot of stuff on Instagram. He's got a lot of good old photos of all sorts of shit. He was a great photographer, but he was my roommate too. And we ended up building a stage for the place right before AFI played there, because we knew it was going to be a big show, and the stage just wasn't going to cut it. And we had stayed up all night, and we built this stage, and, next thing you know, like, it was a good turnout. I don't know, it was like 500 or 600 kids at the show, but there was probably like 150 people on the stage. And we're sitting there and we're like, oh, fuck, is this thing going to even, we were waiting for it to collapse, because, we literally stayed up all night long. We finished it at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, went home and slept for like 2 hours, and then went back for the show. And the glue was probably not even dry at that point on the stage, and but it came off. It was big. It was a dope stage. It was like 20 feet wide. It was like, I think 12 feet deep. Like, you could, and anyway, we had AFI played there, Redemption played there, 25 to Life played there, VOD played there a couple times. Murphy's Law came through there, Agnostic Front came through there, and I knew that was going to happen. And I was just like, hey, dude, like, if we're going to ask these bands to come through here, we got to make this a little bit better. And so we built this stage, and we actually built like almost like an amphitheater, not an amphitheater, but we kind of built a wall and a kind of a roof to it to direct the sound better and stuff, and painted it black and whatever, we set it up the best we could. And the place probably went for like a year. Ernie had conned this dude to put it in his name, the lease and stuff. And so, but anything could go in that neighborhood, man. If you wanted to body somebody, you could have. Like, no one would have even known, dude. Like, it was by some, railroad tracks covered in weeds, and there's piles of garbage everywhere. And the hood was right around the corner. Like, I mean, had to caution people on the regular, like, hey, listen, like, there's a bathroom here. You know, you want to come to the neighborhood, come this way, leave this way. Don't go up the street that way. Just don't, you know, because bad things, nothing good will come with that, you know. But we had great shows, man. I mean, we had VOD show up one time. I mean, on like 2 days notice, because they had a show cancel and they had a bus and they were trying to like cover costs and, you know, whatever. And we put a show together on 2 days notice, and there was like, fuck, I don't know, 400 kids in there, you know. It's like, it kind of, you know, it was like a lightning rod for a moment. People just kind of knew like that was a good place to go catch some shows, you know.
So what ended up happening?
Well, it just kind of ran out. I mean, yeah, anybody that runs a nightclub will tell you like how hard it is to like constantly fill, you know, a calendar with bands and stuff. And, you know, it was fun for a moment. And then when it started to become more like work to Ernie, he just kind of lost interest. And then he put it on Sammy the Mick to keep it running. And, you know, Sammy did the best he could, but he called me more than once to say, Ernie's going to kick my ass. What do I do? And I'd have to call up Ernie and fucking talk him off the ledge and tell him like, chill out. Like, no, it's okay. Sammy's all right. Don't smack him up. It's all right. You know? And I could talk to Ernie that way at least, you know? But it just got, you know, and Sammy finally said, fuck it, I can't do this. And that was kind of like, you know, he got tired of being threatened on a regular basis. So, it just kind of fizzled out, you know, and it was cool for the moment, you know. It was like one of those things, you know, just kind of, it lasted for what it was, and it was cool for the time. But, you know, we had a crucial barbecue with Murphy's Law. We fucking actually ended up with this barbecue and, you know, raged with those dudes all day, and then they played a show and drank beer all night and whatever. And it was, you know, it was cool, man. It was a good place. It was a cool place for sure.
That rules. All right. Well, let's talk about the end of Powerhouse. How does it wrap up?
Well, so I guess, it's beginning in 2004. You know, we were playing shows still. We were playing less shows at the time, you know. Everybody was just kind of doing different shit. I was trying to get my shit together, like financially and this and that. You know, I always worked. I always had a job going. But, you know, anybody in a hardcore band, you know, knows that, there's not a lot of money going out there on the road. I mean, there's a few bands that can do it. You know, Ignite was good at it. Madball can do it. You know, they can actually be a working band. I think Terra does a pretty good job at it too. I don't know their finances, but they keep doing it. So I'm sure that they're doing, you know, they're making some kind of money to keep going out, you know. So some bands have managed to make a living. Sig of It All, another one, you know, they can make a living out of it. You know, that wasn't necessarily us. Like, you know, we could have good shows and this and that, but like we weren't killing it every night. We couldn't demand lots of money. So, you know, I had to work. You know, I had to start getting caught up on my bills, because more times than not, I was the one getting the merch, and, you know, I paid for the van ultimately that we had, and paid the insurance on it, and everything was going to be a bit much. And so I had to pull back a little bit. You know, I didn't want to end the band by any means, but at this point, you know, Eddie had left. He lost a job when we went with Ignite. On tour when we did that, he lost a pretty good job. And so, you know, and he kind of got to a point where he's like, hey man, like I got to make money. He had a girl, he was getting married, like, you know, had a bunch of shit like that. You know, he was kind of growing up, you know, so Eddie left, and that became a weird thing. Cause so, you know, Big J had left, you know, and it was us for, you know, quite a while. It was me, Big J, Ernie, and Eddie. And we were the unit, you know, and when Jay left, it definitely felt weird, but, you know, we could keep going, you know, pretty easily. And then we got Kid, and that was cool. And then, you know, then we got Walter, and that was dope. You know, we'd known Walter forever. And we were a unit too, you know, and then Walter bounced, you know, he ended up going back east. You know, some things didn't work out from here, and he needed to leave. And he, you know, his parents, you know, had health things going on and stuff. And so he went out to be with them. And, you know, and then Eddie leaves, and then, you know, we end up with, Abe that played in Low Life. You know, Abe ended up with us, and that was dope. And we ended up with this guy, Ricky Ross, who was really good drummer, really good drummer. You know, but all the parts started changing. So, you know, and that thing that we started with that just felt so right started feeling a little more disjointed, and not because any of those people were, you know, bad. That just wasn't what it was. It's just that it just became something that was not as recognizable as it had been. And so, it just kind of, it just dwindled. It was dwindling. It was dwindling, and I would say this. So Ernie died from cancer. He died in 2004. He died December 16th of 2004. He died of cancer. He was only 37 years old. But, he kind of knew something was wrong for a few years prior to that. And his girlfriend at the time, her name was Kat, she had asked him a lot of times, like, hey, just go to the doctor. Will you get this shit checked out, please? Will you just do this? And from what I understand, he did go and get tested and this and that, but he never went back to find out what the results were. And he always felt like something was wrong. And he used to tell us, there would be certain times he's like, I know, he'd been drinking and this and that. He'd kind of start getting into a mood, like, I know it, I got cancer and this, and and he just felt like that was it. Like he had it. And 2003 going into 2004, his behavior got different, man. Like, he would get more hostile. I would argue with him a lot more, like, come close to, we fist fought once many, many years ago when we were recording one of those demos, the 96 demo. But after that, we clicked super, super hard. There was kind of a mutual respect that was gained after that fight. And because it was bad. We probably fought for 20 minutes. We fought and it broke up and fought and broke up, fought and broke up, fought and broke up, fought and broke up, And anyway, it was kind of going down that road on a regular basis where we were constantly like at odds, man. We were arguing a lot. We were, Ernie was hostile and really just he was just in a bad way. I looking back on it, I can understand it. But at the time, I just felt like, he's like, dude, you're being such a dick. Like, what the fuck, man? Like, you're my boy. Like, we're not supposed to be like this. And he would just be like that, and he was just acting out and being aggressive. And when I look back on it, I understand it. It's like, he had to have been scared. How could you not be? Like, he knew something was wrong. But he would never say it, and it wasn't until like January of 2004, he and a good friend of ours, Little Kev, were driving. Little Kev was doing t-shirts. He was printing t-shirts and stuff. And they were going for like a t-shirt convention down in Southern California. And Kev was driving and Ernie was in the car with him. And they had to stop constantly because Ernie couldn't even sit in the car because he was in so much pain. Like, I think it took them like 8 or 9 hours to make the drive down. And it was the same or more to come back when they finally came back. And at that point, Ernie knew like he had to go back to the hospital. And he went to this is a guy that, again, he never had a real job. He never worked. So he didn't have medical coverage. So he's relying on the good graces of a hospital that's just going to take you in. And he went in there and they started running some tests. And then it looks like he's got this tumor that's pushing on his stomach and, all this stuff. And so it's, when I look back at, all of this, it's like, okay, well, that's why he was freaking out the way he was. But that's also part of why, like, the band started to dwindle just because it was getting to be hard to do it, and then it turns out that, they find this tumor and they say, hey, yeah, it's like the size of a remote control. So it's like a good sized tumor, man. It's big, and he says, they say to him, well, we could take it out. We feel like you have about a 90% chance, it looks pretty good. And you want me to stop for a second with the car going? Are you picking that up? Can you hear that car, Zach?
Yeah, I hear it, but let's just roll.
Okay. So
we can break.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I can keep going. I'm just trying to catch my train of thought here.
So I know.
So he has the surgery, so we play a Redemption 87 reunion in April. I want to say it was April 23rd of 2004. I feel like that was a date. If it wasn't that, it might have been the 24th, whatever that Saturday was at the end of April. And Ernie was scheduled for his surgery that Monday. And, again, we're understanding everything's going to be okay. 90% chance. That's pretty good odds, man. Right. So he went into the hospital on Sunday. They had to prep him up, no eating, this and that, whatever. And so he'd been there and he had a surgery on Monday. I talked to him on Tuesday morning and I'm like, yo, man, so what's the word? How you doing? And he's like, nah, bro, that's it. And I was like, nah, don't even joke around like that. Shut up, dude. And he was like, no, dude, I'm fucking serious. Like, that's it. I was like, what do you mean that's it? He's like, they told me it's everywhere. And it turned out that like the cancer was everywhere, man. Like it was everywhere. And it was like all the oxygen on the planet left me at that point. Like it was just gone. Like, and they told him at that point he had 6 months to a year to live, and that was April and he made it to December. He made it 8 months, but and that ultimately was the end, because at one point, as everyone kept leaving the band, I looked at her and I said, hey man, you ever leave this band? That's it, dude. I'm not doing this band without you, and that was probably around the time that Eddie left. I was just like, I can't, like, I'm not going to do this band without you. Eddie wasn't in the band. I can't do that band. Ernie's the one Ernie started the band, it just, to me at that moment wouldn't have been right, So then he got sick and he fought this cancer thing. And they told him based on where the cancer was, I mean, it was everywhere in his organs, man. And they just told him, they said, hey, there's nothing we can do for you. And they said, you could do radiation or you could do chemo. Actually, they said you could do chemo, but you're going to be miserable and you might get an extra 6 months. And so he said, fuck it. And he didn't do anything. And they gave him some morphine patches because the pain got really bad. And he just kept saying, if it keeps hurting, put on another morphine patch, And he just rode that shit out, man. I mean, he was hard, dude. He was hard, man. I mean, like, he just kept doing what he could do until he couldn't anymore. And that was it, But and that became the end of the band, man. That was December 16th of 2004. That's when Powerhouse ended, and we did a memorial show after that, which helped pay for his headstone. And then we ended up doing another memorial show about 5 years later that Ian McFarlane actually filmed, and we have film of it. And we actually, I ended up singing for Doomsday Device, which was Ernie's other band, and that band was dope. That band was so good, and the later songs that never got released were so good. And part of my inspiration at that point was to try to just keep that band out there. And so we did this kind of combo Powerhouse Doomsday show, and to play those songs just so they didn't get forgotten and record them. And at some point, I do hope we can still get that out there because it was like a 5-camera shoot. Michael Rosen, insane engineer, came and recorded it for us. The recording's great. The video's great. We got to interview people about Ernie. Like, I just gotta get back around to it, but that's out there too, to get out there. I mean, the most important thing to me now is just keeping Ernie's name out there, man. I mean, he was, like you said, he was a character, man. There's certain people, man, that really truly like means something to everyone. He was one of those people that just like, he was bigger than life. And so when he died, a lot of people were just kind of like lost, myself included. I was truly lost, man. We created something with Powerhouse. It kind of was more, it wasn't just being a band. It was actually more of a movement. And so, Ernie was my bandmate. Ernie was like my brother. Ernie was my business partner because we did actually have a tattoo shop together. And so when he died, like, everything that I had come to know myself as, like, stopped existing, man, because we were so intertwined. And it got really weird for a long time, man. I was in a pretty bad space for a long time, man. Like, I couldn't get out of it because I felt, nothing seemed recognizable anymore,
How were you able to pull out of it?
I have no idea, man. A lot of therapy, I guess. Who knows? A lot of introspection, man. I've had to look at myself and just, and a lot of this, it's time, man. Time does a lot. You kind of see what's happened with people. You see what's happened with yourself. Growing up, I had a pretty fucking shitty upbringing, man. And I knew there was something wrong when it came to my family. Like, I knew there was something wrong, but I was always told that it was me. Like, oh, you're just tripping. You're just tripping. And at 38 years old, I finally found out that, no, I wasn't tripping. I was right. Like, no, there was something really fucked up. But because I grew up that way, because I was always told that it's like, no, it's you, it's you, it's you. I always learned that I could only look inside. I couldn't reach out to others for help. And so but when it's like that, it takes a long time, man. Like, and so for real, I was just like stuck inside myself for a really, really long time, man. A really long time, because I felt like I had to figure it out on my own. I felt like I was on an island. I really did, because at that point, I kind of was, things started to splinter even within my family. There was some rifts in my family, when it came to me and my brother and the friendships and the band, like everything just like, it just was like a massive explosion, and everything just flew everywhere,
Yeah, that's brutal. But you pulled out of it, right? So that's positive for people, because a lot of people do loss like that.
Yeah, I mean,
here you are.
Yeah, and so I did the best I could to stay connected to music, because it truly is my life's blood. Like it does inspire me. So I started promoting shows in 2007. I promoted out of the Metro a little bit. I promoted with the Park side. I promoted at DNA. I promoted at this place called Cornerstone. I've done some stuff at Gilman. So I keep promoting shows. And then on top of that, then I also started tour managing a lot. So I worked for Rancid, and I worked for the From Casuals, and I worked for Madball. I've done some one-off stuff for Agnostic Front. I'd been offered other things too, but I was more interested in working with the people that I love, like my friends. So I kind of was pretty choosy about stuff. I wasn't just looking for a gig, because I had a job here. I could make money here all day. That's not a problem. So, but that's some of the stuff that kind of kept me going a little bit. But I mean, the big news is that actually we've been playing again. We've actually even been writing new music. So what once was will be again. Yeah,
I can't wait.
Yeah. So, Walter's actually in the next room. He came back out here, and he's staying with me right now while he's getting situated. And we got Eddie playing guitar again, and he's really happy to be doing it. And it feels good to him. And it feels great to me, and it feels great to Walter. And we got Casey that played with Never Healed and played with All From Casuals. And he's got another band he's doing now as well. But he, for the longest time, it was one of those things where, if I were going to stand on stage, I always knew when I'd look to my left, most of the times left, Ernie was going to be standing there. And it's like, well, and being the personality that he was, who the fuck could fill his shoes? Like, who the fuck could fill his shoes? And the answer is no one. No one could ever be Ernie. That's the truth of the matter. I mean, his personality, his songwriting, his just the way he embraced life. I mean, he lived life so full. Like, it was crazy. Like I admired him for the way he could live life, because every day was just like meant to be a massive party and celebration. Like, that's just how he lived it. And it was a pretty awesome way to be, man. I mean, for the short amount of time that he did it right. But again, how do I stand on stage with someone else? Like, who's going to be the right guy? Well, I've known Casey for a long time now, and Casey's he's a great guitar player, but he turns out to be a really awesome bass player too. And there's things that are familiar about, Casey. Like, Casey is not Ernie, and Ernie would have never been Casey, but there's familiar things about Casey that makes it feel right to me. And in that, I can be okay with like doing this again. Cause I feel like, you know, I realized that, you know, by not doing the band, I'm not keeping Ernie out there. Like we're not doing him, you know, I'm doing him a disservice by not doing the band. Like I don't want people to forget about him. I don't want people to forget what an awesome person he was, or the musicianship, the you know, the bass player, just everything that he brought to the world that I knew, at least, and a lot of other people that knew him. If you knew Ernie, I mean, you just, I wish I could explain it better. It's just, he was one of those people, man, like, you know, irreplaceable. But Casey gives me enough familiarity where I can say, okay, I can do this, you know?
Yeah. So the future is uncertain, but as of now, like, how do you look at the legacy of Powerhouse in like Bay Area hardcore history?
How do I look at it? Well, I mean, so again, at the time that we started doing the band, there wasn't a hardcore scene here. There just wasn't. There was nothing. There was, you know, Attitude Adjustment had done something prior to us for sure. And they were a good band and they were respected. But they were kind of standalone. They weren't, at least from what I understood about it, they were like a standalone band, you know. And they were really good for what they did, but they weren't necessarily part of like a hardcore scene. You know, I mean, metal was king here, thrash metal. I mean, we're talking, this is like ground zero thrash metal, you know. That's what was the big deal, and that's kind of what was still going on in the early 90s. And so we literally, you know, and then what was being claimed as hardcore was like Screw 32 and Good Riddance and AFI and all that. And that was cool. You know, they were doing their thing, but they were more melodic and they, you know, more punky kind of, you know, hardcore. And that was cool too, but we weren't really accepted in those circles. And that's kind of how the OBHC thing spawned, is that, you know, they were all claiming this East Bay hardcore thing. That was what they did. And we weren't really welcoming that. And I can understand. I mean, Ernie was an intimidating guy. He looked forward to knocking somebody out on a regular basis. I watched him do it a million times. And more times than not, he would laugh after he did it, you know. And so I could understand why people might be leery hanging around him. You know, he definitely had, we all had a reputation, you know, he particularly, but we all had a reputation. The band had a reputation, and we weren't embraced by the East Bay hardcore scene. And I was like, our boy Lil Kev, his dad had an embroidery shop in Alameda. And I was like, well, fuck, I mean, the X and the hardcore, how do we fucking do this? And I was like, well, we're an Oakland band. I said, we our shit, our brand, this is our brand. We are an Oakland brand hardcore. This is what we do. And we just started claiming Oakland, and that was it. It's like, you guys can have your East Bay shit and whatever, but we're going to be Oakland, and this is us. And a lot of people rallied around that, you know, and that's kind of what stuck, man. And it wasn't an intentional thing. It just kind of happened, you know. It was just kind of like, I want this cool thing on a hat. You know, I got to put something on there. OBHC. Okay, that'll work, you know. And because I felt like Oakland, California hardcore, OCHC would look weird on a hat. So it just ended up being this B, you know, Oakland brand hardcore. And people embraced it, man. And it stuck. And, you know, when I promote shows, still, it's cool, man. I mean, I never really thought about it that way. But kids will come up and say, hey, man, thank you for what you did. And I'm like, well, I didn't really feel like I did that much. But, I mean, I'm flattered to know that for some people that what we did mattered that much. I mean, it's nice to hear, man. You know, it's cool, and you know, there's a scene here now, and it keeps going, and it's cool, and I'm psyched to hopefully, you know, really truly be back a part of it as a band, you know. But yeah, I mean, I you know, I guess we kind of get dubbed with that, you know, the founding father kind of shit of the area, I guess. I don't know. I don't know, you know, but.
Yeah, what's rad about it is like it started so organically, and like you guys were always authentic, right? Yeah. And that's why it has lasting value.
Well, yeah, thank you. I mean, we just did what we did. I mean, we truly, it was almost like the band was secondary, man. Like, you know, we just loved each other as people. We wanted to hang out and be around each other. And then it turned out that we could play music together too. That was like bonus, you know? And then we could go play shows too, you know? But we were going to hang out no matter what. And that's more times than not, we'd go out on tours and the shows would be cool. But our favorite part was being in the van, talking shit, and wherever we were heading next. And it was just being together. Like, we truly loved being together. So, and I guess people felt that. I mean, maybe that's what it is. I don't know. I don't know.
I think that's it. Like the authenticity like comes through. Like, you guys were real bros, right? Like, you're not just like, you're not a strategic band, like trying to, not that you weren't trying to make things happen, but it's natural. You're around each other because you love each other and you love your music.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. You answered it better than me.
Oh, come on. I got practice.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, you did great. I really appreciate your time. You've been very generous with your time.
I appreciate it. I'm glad to know someone actually wants to hear what the fuck I have to say, man.
People are ready for it. Do you feel like you've been well represented?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I realize, like, one question or a conversation leads to another. There's a million things that I realize, like, wow, I could have talked about this, or I could have talked about that,
Hey, we can always do a part 2 when Jeremy Lux listens to this and tells me everything I forgot to ask.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. I appreciate your time, man. I really do.